So weird. Miss Ashley's been a big baby.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Are you crying?
No.
Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Not. My eyes are leaking. It's the weirdest thing. So, onions. I swear. They're the devil. Anywho. So, the podcast. I was talking with Miss Ashley, and, a lot of you guys that are here now, weren't here as it was unfolding, and, so gonna kind of give a little refresher, an overview, and then we'll dive right into it. So what I'm talking about is there's a podcast on Patreon. The guy that does the podcast, his name is Jason. He's really, 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 really awesome at what he does. I love his format and the way that he goes about doing his investigation, so to say. We, as in me, Ashley, her family, and Jason all collaborated together for several months. And overall, I cannot stress this enough. He did a phenomenal job. The way that he breaks this down with the episodes and getting to know Alex as a person and humanizing the situation and him and his life and who he was. And it's very, very, very well put together. And it's 4 episodes long. They're about 20-ish, 25 minutes long each episode. And we're just going to go ahead and bust through all 4. I am going to go ahead and tell you now, if you don't have any Kleenex or tissue, it's a tearjerker, and it's amazing. And the link to the podcast, to the specific series about Alex, is in the description below. It's on Patreon. His Patreon is called, the podcast is called A Sip of Justice, but this series specifically is called Down in Mississippi, and it's 4 episodes. I think it's season 2, episode 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to share a screen, and I'm going to mute because I'm going to cry. I've already listened to this 11 times, but it's this is Alex's story. I couldn't have it's really good. So buckle up, Buttercup. We're about to dive right in. And for purposes not of Jason, I'm not worried about him, but Ashley knows what I'm talking about. Chris knows what I'm talking about. I'm going to go ahead and play this disclaimer so that nobody be getting crazy.
This video contains commentary and analysis of a YouTube video and may include copyrighted material. The use of such material is in accordance with the fair use provisions of Section 107 of the United States Copyright Law. The commentary provided is for criticism, commentarial educational purposes, and aims to contribute to public discourse and understanding. The use of copyrighted material is transformative and adds significant value to the original content. The inclusion of any copyrighted material is not intended to infringe upon copyright. and I strive to use what is necessary to support the commentary. This video expresses the opinions of the creator and should not be considered as professional advice. The creator make no representations or warranties regarding the accuracy or completeness of the information provided. Viewers are encouraged to engage in their own independent research and critical thinking. The creator does not endorse or promote any specific products, services, or views unless explicitly stated. By watching this video, you agree to the terms mentioned in this disclaimer. Thank you.
So sorry to have to do that to y'all. It's miserable, but it just saves me a lot of it. Just suck it up. Got to deal with it. It's part of these obligations. So I'm gonna go ahead and share screen, and as this comes up, let me see. Okay. Well, let me go ahead and full screen it. Ew. Okay, hopefully, yeah, you can still hear me. So when you go to Patreon, and you go to find a creator here, I'll just go to homepage, type in a sip of justice, and what it will look like. You're going to click on collections, which is the second option, and then you're going to scroll down to Down in Mississippi right here. And the newest one's on the top, so you're going to want to scroll all the way down and go to episode 1. However, we're going to do that right now. So, this first one is titled Down in Mississippi Season 2, Episode 1. It was released on October 23rd, 2023. And it says, Alex Easterling was about to be 31 years old when he vanished from Holmes County, Mississippi. In the return of the ASOJ series Down in Mississippi, hear how this man's family, working to uncover what became of Alex, uncovered a problem of epidemic proportions in their local community and government. 22 minutes long, and we are going to begin. It is, once again, a podcast, so it's just going to be audio. So I apologize if you get bored, like me, with nothing to look at, but it's a podcast, so close your eyes and be a... No, I'm just kidding. It's a podcast, though. So, trying to talk him into, like, converting all of his podcasts to YouTube videos, but baby steps. We'll get there. He's awesome, though. Really, like, check him out. He's really, really good.
Tell him about it.
Hello, my friends. It's good old JLU. This podcast episode you're about to hear, if you would like to hear a lot more like it, visit asipofjustice.com. There you will find information on the various investigative series I've done. The series is A Sip of Justice is all about bringing exposure to Mississippi cold cases, getting answers for families and friends of people who have been victimized. Some episodes are free, and some are exclusive to paid subscribers, but rest assured, all information obtained in these investigations is handed over to the families and to proper authorities. Wherever you're listening, please do share it with your friends. If possible on the platform, please give us a like and or a positive review. Hey, you could even do both. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I would truly appreciate it. I do hope to interact with you on the ASOJ Patreon, which again, you can find by visiting asipofjustice.com. There, I'm about to relaunch a weekly series breaking down, riffing on SIP news and politics. Discretion is advised. The views and opinions of those featured in the program may not necessarily reflect those of A Sip of Justice or Tell 'em About It Media.
I don't remember how long ago it was now, but, she just stopped me in my tracks and said, Mimi, is my daddy in heaven? I said, well, I'm not sure, baby. But, there's a possibility that he is already. I said, but you know what? It's okay. because guess what? He's just going to be waiting on us when we get there. She's like, yeah, but I didn't get to tell him goodbye. And she deserves that. I deserve that. His grandparents deserve that. Just to be able to give him the right kind of goodbye. And to be able to, like, take a full deep breath again, because I have not.
And I'm a hard man. But that's my boy.
It's nearly broken us.
As we've been through all this, I say nothing surprises me anymore, and then something will happen and I'll go, oh my God, I cannot believe this. I mean, the whole thing has been like that. You know, I think, oh, this can't get any worse. Oh, yes, it can. It's been like that the whole time. Mm-hmm. And Ashley's never going to give up. None of us are ever going to give up.
Now that's a little alarming. A raging fire in the middle of the night on someone's property here in Holmes County, Mississippi, and the owner is turning down help from firefighters. It's definitely not some kind of controlled burn, and in fact, it's taking place during a statewide burn ban. And in other news, a local woman, 58 years old, missing for days, found deceased in a creek, and investigate within a span of only a couple years. Family, we will shed light. It's familiar with Holmes case, as here's what I can. If you are unfamiliar with Holmes County, Mississippi, here's what I can tell you up front. It's got the Yazoo River on one side of it and the Big Black River on the other. It comprises the cities of Lexington and Durant, and among others, the town of Pickens. As I would imagine is the case with most counties, some areas within it are a little nicer, a little safer than others.
He moved back up to Holmes County and staying in a house that I was like, what do you mean you don't have to pay rent? He was like, no, it's my buddy's house. It's paid for. That
is Ashley Martin, maiden name Easterling, talking about her son, Alex. Specifically about Alex's decision as an adult to live in what he told her was a friend's house in Pickens.
I went up there and saw it once, and it was this junky old house in Pickens that I'm like, okay, well, I'll come see you in the daytime, but you're on the other side of the railroad tracks, like literally.
Literal wrong side of the tracks.
Literal wrong side of the tracks.
So who's this buddy who had the house?
D. Edward Anderson. I learned his name on April 20th, 2022, when I was taking Alex back home to Pickens.
This day, in April of 2022, was one Ashley would never forget. Alex had been gone for months. We'll get into details later. Suffice it to say, it was unavoidable. But on this day, they met up, had pizza. Alex was without a job and now without a phone, so Ashley bought him a new one at Walmart.
I got to spend an afternoon with my son, who I had not seen since before Thanksgiving. We laughed, we cut up. It was something that I had not had with just him and me in a long time.
Ashley had been trying to talk Alex into living with or near her again in Madison, SIP. He insisted on returning to Pickens. She didn't like it, but he's 30 years old. What are you going to do? He was working on finding a job. He could stay in the buddy's house rent-free. And hey, a lot of his things were still there anyway. Ashley said, okay, I'll take you there. That afternoon, when they took Interstate 55 North and the appropriate exit of 144, Alex asked his mom to stop by the gas station so he could buy cigarettes. But not the station most convenient of the two in the area. He wanted the Shell station in the opposite direction from their destination. Ashley said, sure thing, and waited while her boy went in.
He comes out of the store and was like, hey, instead of having to drive me all the way home, you can just drop me off at a buddy's house that's right here close by, and he'll just get me on home later tonight. I was like, well, we're basically there now. He's like, no, I know you don't want to go to Pickens. I was like, all right, well, where does he live? He's like, just right back across the interstate. And it's the first left once you come back over, and it's Stockyard Road. 6 generations of my family in Lexington. You know, I've driven that way a million times. I never even knew that road was there.
Arriving at this buddy's residence, Ashley was somewhat impressed by certain aspects of the place, but also weirded out.
It's not abnormal to see a property or in a rural area with cars sitting out, you know, and some of them had the hoods up and some of them were, you know, the front end was wrecked. And I'm thinking, okay, it's like a junkyard. Turn, and there's this big fence with a cattle gate that was open and a really nice, you know, double wide trailer. And when I looped in, I turned and just had the front of my car pointing back out. I didn't know where I was.
Ashley felt the need in that moment, as a mother, to get a little more info.
Where are we? Whose house is this that we're at? He's like, oh, this is just my buddy. I was like, no, who is your buddy? Oh, well, his name is D. Edward Anderson. And I text myself, D. Edward Anderson, and I dropped a map pin. So we got out and I hugged him. And I was like, all right, I love you. Be smart, please.
Alex did something then my daughter often does before I make a trip. He asked his mom to text him when she made it home. And of course, Ashley did text him. But she got no response. When her husband, Brent, got home from work that night, she told him she couldn't stop thinking about the sketchy place she'd left her son. Next morning, still nothing from Alex. Ashley went to work, anxious, worried all workday, and that may even seem to you a little much. But bear in mind what Alex's grandparents would tell you about his relationship with their girl.
Such a connection with his mother. He talked to her all the time.
2 or 3 times a day.
He was connected at the navel with her.
That is Alex's grandfather, Robert, and grandmother, Arlene. By the time Ashley got back home that next evening, she was telling herself not to be that mom. There was probably a girl he had called since he had been away so long. When Brent Martin got home that night, Ashley asked, what would be a reasonable time frame before there's a wellness check? Brent, not realizing until that point that she still had not heard from Alex, answered, right now. Now, as you have probably assumed, Ashley never heard from her son again. Not too long after that conversation between Ashley and Brent, on Alex's birthday, his Aunt Tracy, that's Ashley's sister, living several states away, became concerned when she could not reach him, so she called the fam, and they brought her up to speed.
I was like, oh, well, you know, maybe he's here or maybe he's there. And they're like, no, Ashley dropped him off and we haven't heard from him since and we're worried. And I was like, I'm on my way. And so I never even got to tell him happy birthday.
Now you may be thinking, why didn't Tracy, the aunt, know about this sooner? Ashley would tell you it's because she could barely think straight at the time. Tracy would tell you it's because the family expected her to be judgmental about the way they had handled things. But know this, it wasn't due to any lack of a family bond. The Easterling family is a very close one. When Tracy was 6 years old, her single mother, Arlene, met Robert Easterling, and those two hit it off like frog and a bandit. Robert wanted to make Arlene his bride, but as he tells me, he did not take for granted the third party in the equation.
I didn't just propose to her. I said it's a package deal. Tracy had to be there and had to agree to it.
I remember that he really, accepted me, and I really appreciated that. I do remember, and he's always told me that he married us both.
Tracy wound up getting more than she bargained for in this deal.
So I was 8 when my mom got pregnant with Ashley, and from the moment she was born, she was mine. I mean, I loved her
just more than, I didn't even know that much love was possible, okay?
Close as the sisters were, by the time Ashley was in her mid-teens, Tracy was in her early 20s. She was off and on her own. Now, by all accounts, Ashley was a great kid, but Arlene Easterling started getting suspicious about her when Ashley began begging to skip church. Arlene took a long look at her youngest daughter, who had taken to wearing baggy sweats an awful lot of the time, and then she cornered Robert.
She said, look at your daughter. I was going, okay, what? Leaned over, she said, she's pregnant. I said, what? I said, I don't want to hear what you think. I want y'all to go to the drugstore, get a couple of pregnancy tests.
And yeah, both those tests were positive. Robert, still in disbelief, sent Ashley and Arlene to see a doctor and went about his business, that being the business he owned.
Pick up the phone with the Pleasure Island Dive Center. Daddy? I said, yeah. She says, it's a boy. From that second on, nothing else mattered except Ashley and that baby in her belly.
I asked Tracy if she was freaked out when she heard her little sister was about to become a teen mom.
I was trying to think of how I could get to her. Like, that's all I could think about was what we were going to do, how I could get to her, how I could help. It was shocking. I got really nervous. I got scared for her, what was going to happen, you know. But that was just the beginning of it. And then our little Alex was born and the world was all right again, right?
Robert Easterling was overwhelmed when Ashley told him she would name the boy after him, just with the different middle name she wanted, Alexander. Knowing Ashley was only 16 when she gave birth to Alex, I wondered if Alex's father was in the picture at all.
He wasn't ready to be a dad, but I didn't have a choice. And so there's no real bad blood. Never had anything negative to say.
Though he was without a father, Alex was surrounded by people who cared for him, and he showed signs of being very bright very early.
Even when he was itty bitty, and my mom and I were really two of the only people who could understand what he was truly saying. That child could tell you every dinosaur, you know, what period they were from, and you know, that's not a stegosaurus, that's a bulbosaurus. And I'm like, well, that's great.
I can tell you that my son did exactly the same thing, and that my son too is incredibly intelligent, and that he will probably tell you this if you ask him. But I digress. Alex's Aunt Tracy really got to spend time with Alex when he was 5-6 years old. She moved back home, and all the Robert Easterling fam was geographically close again for the time being.
He was just the cutest kid. I mean, I tell you, it was hard for me to think, except for my own son, a more beautiful, physically, spiritually, mentally person on the earth. I'm telling you, the kid was just precious, okay? And smart, really smart.
Growing up, he's the kind that very mechanically inclined. Like, you could dump out 1,000 Legos on this table, and within about an hour, he could have you some sort of structure built, because that's just how his mind works. Take things apart, figure out why it's not running, put it back together and hand it to you and go, here, I fixed it.
He loved to take stuff apart, put it back together. If it's broke, he can take it apart and fix it. Anything all the way up to earbuds, charger cords for phones, anything. You know, radios, TVs, VCRs.
Robert told me a lot of funny stories about young Alex. My favorite one was the time he asked the boy if he wanted to go eat at Piccadilly, and Alex panicked. And Robert realized Dilly was what Alex called his, well, let's say, for these purposes, Willie.
Family joke was, hey, Alex, you want to go to Piccadilly? I ain't going to Piccadilly. Why would you go to Piccadilly?
Alex also got his head stuck between two wooden beams at a Hooters, and the fire department had to be called. That was my runner-up.
Everybody loved Alex.
Everybody loved Alex.
And
sweet kid. Always had a smile on his face. Always was respectful. Always. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
Early on, Robert clearly became the primary father figure in Alex's life.
He and Alex were extremely close. My dad, he did the Scoutmaster with the Andrew Jackson Council.
Having grown up in Boy Scouts himself, Robert became a camp commissioner during Alex's formative years.
And Alex spent every summer with me for 3 years at the camp. A child could not have had a better adventure. And I mean, he got every merit badge that was offered at the camp.
Had he not pushed it to the side, he would have been the youngest Eagle Scout in the state of Mississippi, because he was Order of the Arrow and one badge and one service, the community service thing, away from having his Eagle Scout when he was like 12.
As you can tell, Alex was a perfect fit for Scouts. His interests?
Any kind of stuff outdoors, and building forts and, tree houses.
But again, young Alex was also well-read.
He threw himself into books. Alex practically read every book. I would send him books, and we would talk about books. One of his favorite books was the Hatchet series, Gary Paulson's. Yep. He read that 7 or 8 times. We read it together once, and then he read it to my son.
Some days, Alex would play hooky from school at the behest of his mom. Ashley says she would wake up and think, I just want to hang out with him and go to a movie today.
Are you feeling good today? Is today a day you need to go to school? No, I think we can, because matinee is always cheaper.
She says for the most part, she and Alex shared the same attitude about life in general.
Always laughing, always having fun. No matter how bad the situation is, you got to find either something funny in it, silver lining kind of thing.
One bad situation for Alex, Robert Easterling headed to Iraq to fight as a contractor for the United States. And the silver lining was the entrance of Brent Martin, the man who would become Ashley's husband.
There is a picture on that refrigerator. I knew when they came with that picture and brought it to me, because I was working that Saturday or something, and they went over to North Park together, that I knew right then. I was like, this is my guy. This is him. And it's the goofiest, it's one of those little film rolls or whatever, but Alex had always had that wall. And then here they come showing me this picture. It says best friends at the top, making these goofy faces.
It's not anything you can slow down. Alex grew into adulthood, but as any of you veteran parents out there know, they're always your baby.
He had a couple of really, really good years. When he met the mother of my granddaughter, they did really well together. Planned and made a conscious effort to make a baby, even though they weren't married.
How did they meet?
Online.
Like dating site on purpose? Or
yes.
Just, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Alex met a girl by the name of Laura. Fell hard.
He wanted something of his own. He wanted his own little family that nobody could take away from him, that was his, and nobody could dictate to him.
Caught Robert and Arlene off guard for sure, but they were supportive as always.
Alex was trying to do the right thing, and he's had several good jobs. Everybody's worked for loves him.
Alex's grandpa continually advised him to leave Holmes County for greener pastures, especially since he would be starting a family. But Alex did not leave Holmes County, and maybe never will. There are some things I have not yet told you about Alex Easterling, because I wanted you to get to know him first. We'll take a hard look next episode. But there are also some things about the Easterling family I have not yet revealed. As you will learn, if you're just in the market for families to mess with, it may be wise to just keep on browsing. Coming up on Down in Mississippi.
And all of a sudden he says, you're Alex's granddaddy, aren't you? I said, I am. He said, they call you real deal outlaw. He said, Alex says you're the baddest motherfucker in this whole county. Yeah, Alex told me all about you. I know all about you. And I stepped right up into his face. And I said, no, you don't, but you're going to.
Down in Mississippi is produced, edited, scored by me, Jason Lee.
Tell him about it.
Everybody loved Alex.
And
Sweet kid.
Path I mentioned to you. There are a lot of disturbing sights to see along the way. It is a trail of broken hearts, broken homes, of corrupted minds, corrupted officials, a trail of blood and bodies down in Mississippi. Episode 2, Rid. She had no ill will about this, didn't pursue that at the time. You'll recall Ashley Martin telling you that when she gave birth to Alex, the biological father wanted nothing to do with being a parent. She had no ill will about this, didn't pursue that at the time. But she did kind of expect Alex to want to track him down someday.
Alex and I had lots of conversations about it, really more so in the last few years. Here's his number, here's his name, here's his Facebook account, if you want to reach out.
Alex never did take it upon himself to reach out. But as Alex, the boy, got older, his Aunt Tracy says she could see growing anxiety, fear, perhaps depression, and could relate.
Alex and I are a lot alike, okay? We don't really know who our fathers are. I didn't know my father. He didn't know his either. There's a lot of anxiety around that. You never really know if you're loved. You just never really know if you're just being accepted for now and that's going to be all taken away. You feel like you have to earn it. That's the best way I can describe it if somebody that grows up fatherless. I mean, there's books that have been written about it, right? But I think it manifested first as an anxiety for him, and he started being nervous and scared.
Alex's grandfather, Robert, says, sure, maybe some of that, but there were other contributing factors toward the boy's negative direction. His initial experimentation with drugs. Approaching junior high school, Alex and his mom relocated to the city of Brandon in Rankin County.
But he was in a new school. All his friends that lived in the neighborhood were older than him. And he was really into skateboarding, and that's where I think he got exposed to smoking pot, was from some of these older guys.
And it was around this time that Robert went to Iraq as a contractor.
School grades started really faltering, and that was what prompted his summer school at French Camp.
You know, when I was an angsty teen myself, there were no two more horrifying words than military school. That was the threat from my folks that would work every time. Keep it up. You're on your way to military school. If you aren't aware of French Camp, it's a little different from that. It's a boarding school in central Mississippi. And while there, Alex actually began performing at a high level again.
And made an A, but it was structure. I think it was the structure of it.
He had a science teacher that he really bonded, a man that he really bonded with. The best thing in the world. And he was looking forward to going back for the next semester.
This science teacher, evidently a powerful, positive influence on Alex at French Camp.
It made him hungry for knowledge again. He enjoyed learning, and they also introduced him back to Christ. But he bonded so well with this guy.
And he, during the break between the summer school and going back in the fall, the guy had to have heart surgery, and he died on the table.
After bouncing back in a big way and then learning this teacher had suddenly died, young Alex was devastated. And in fact, his grandparents believe this event, more than any other, pushed him toward what would be his demise. Alex begged his mom to be done with French Camp, and she brought him home. Good news, Robert came home from Iraq. But he says he himself was a changed man at this point. He was having difficulty readjusting to normal life in general, not to mention reconnecting with his grandson. Predictably, Alex's grades started slipping again, and Ashley and her husband Brent suspected he was smoking weed. Some short years later, that had become apparent. Was he pretty upfront about it, or he was okay?
Yeah, and you'd see, he'd do stupid Facebook posts and are you kidding me?
Aunt Tracy kept expecting to find her old friend and nephew Alex, but she says that anxiety, maybe sadness, was showing itself progressively more. Remember the kid with the passion for taking things apart, repairing things, building things?
I was home visiting, and he had gotten a little job at the hardware store uptown in Lexington. And he was putting together grills and everything that they had at the hardware store that they displayed. And I said, oh my gosh, you must love having that job. You get to put things together all the time. And he said, I used to love that.
Alex was a senior at Madison Central High School now, and one of his friends was arrested for possession of marijuana. Police sat that kid down and said, hey, look, help us help you, will you?
His friend was like, hey man, can you go get me some? And so he got a ride from a friend. They went somewhere and picked up a bag of pot and brought it back, and they met at the gas station in front of Kroger, and the whole thing was a setup. And they arrested Alex when he was 17 for felony sale of marijuana. They enhanced it, which means it's automatically doubled, because it was within 1,500 feet of a church, school, public park, blah, blah, blah. And the whole thing was set to do that way for pressure. Because they wanted Alex to, in turn, tell on other people. Well, he flat out adamantly refused. This could be 18 years. I was like, he's 17 years old. He's 17 years old for pot. Again, looking back, it's like 2.8 grams, I think, because I read over the paper. And I'm like, that's not even like a quarter bag of pot.
Yeah.
But he ended up doing a non-adjudicated, you have to plead guilty. Mm-hmm. They dropped the conspiracy because there was another person that was also enhanced. So it was just a sale of marijuana. It was non-adjudicated, and he had to complete the RID program, which is the Regimented Inmate Discipline Program at Walnut Grove. You go over, and it's very military style. They shave your head. You have to wear the fatigues. When he would come in, when we were able to go and visit, they would make them come into the visitation room doing this alligator crawl with their faces almost on the floor.
Now, this RID program does sound a lot like what my imagination conjured when I would catch those military school warnings from my folks. In hearing about this, you may think, man, if I had to do all that, you can bet I wouldn't go getting into trouble again. Ashley says, to the contrary, Alex felt trouble just followed him after that. In a way, it did.
Not only did he do 9 months in the RID program, but he did his 5 years of probation. Every time he went to go get a job, it was there. And we made phone calls. I thought this was not adjudicated. Why is it there? That haunted him.
Whatever your stance on marijuana, whether it's addictive, whether it's terribly harmful, whether it's a gateway, Ashley felt she could accept her son's involvement with it by comparison to serious street drugs. As long as it was just pot, it was okay. And then the day came. Alex was arrested for possession of crystal meth.
He was like, I'm not doing it. I was like, but you have it. Why are you even fooling us? That's like real drugs.
By this time, Alex had met and fallen for Laura, the young lady who would become the mother of his child. So, of course, Ashley thought to herself, this sketchy girlfriend has got to be the one truly responsible for this. She did more than think it, she voiced it. And then didn't anymore.
Because her daddy very shortly thereafter called me and said, you're sitting here blaming my daughter for the methamphetamines. Well, your son is on heroin. I was like, you're out of your mind. You're crazy. You're a crazy person. My son would never do that. Well, I was wrong.
When I began getting to know the Easterling family, and through them getting to know Alex, I kept asking, why heroin? I'll be honest, I've asked that about anyone I've ever known who has become a heroin addict. Like, how do you ever take that first leap? It's just particularly surprising with a person like Alex. But I think his mom and aunt sum it up well.
Nobody starts using drugs because they think, oh, this would be so cool to be addicted to something. They start it as an escape from whether it's a hurt or a loneliness or I just don't want to be me right now. And what starts as an escape becomes a prison.
Two paths. One is you got to get your don't give a shit attitude going, or you punish yourself kind of thing, right? And I think he went between those two things for so long that he just needed a little bit more to soothe the pain. that's how I think it started.
So now, Ashley has accepted her son is on heroin. She does not accept the idea that it will continue. She said, hey, you're still on our insurance. It's time for rehab. Alex kept putting her off. By the way, the baby plan had worked out. Laura and Alex welcomed Leslie Grace into the world. 2 days later,
Alex and I sat and argued about it for hours. I'm not going. I don't need it. I can do it on my own. And, and I just threw my hands up and went to the bedroom and was crying. And my husband was like, what are you doing? And he walked back and they had their discussion. And he came back in the room and he said, he's going tomorrow. You driving him or am I?
Yeah, Brent was not having it. But I want anyone listening who may not understand this to know, I can tell you from experience. When Alex was sitting there arguing about going to rehab, when he said he could do it on his own, he believed it. Maybe there was a tiny voice somewhere in the back of his mind saying, no, you can't do it. But more likely, it was just the voice of Brent Martin saying, you don't have a choice, comprende? So, Alex in rehab, success, until the next big bump in the road.
And I would drive over, it was in Louisiana, Palmetto. It's where the intervention TV show. And he was really, really making good progress. And we had gotten to the part in rehab where you do your timeline and you make an inventory of your life. Mm-hmm. And where you feel like things got off track. And we get a call from the insurance company and they said, hey, we've covered as much as we're going to cover. So if you want him to stay, it's got to be out of pocket. There was no way. And it was crushing. I'm not saying that if he had stayed that things would have been, that he wouldn't have relapsed. But I know that he didn't get the full benefit. And it was very disheartening for him, for us.
As you just heard from Ashley, yes, Alex started using again. Her first clue?
Car wreck. Terrible car wreck. I'm like, how does this happen? I passed out, going around a curve.
After this, Alex agreed to return to a rehab facility, this one closer and inexpensive. Once, when Ashley visited him there, he gave her a very real, very sober piece of advice.
Truly honest conversation. He says, like, Mama, when I call you, even if I'm crying and saying I just need food or I just need to put gas in my car, I don't need gas. I don't need food. Do not do it. And I'm like, thank you. He wanted to be the dad that he didn't have. And he said that on multiple occasions. I don't want my little girl to look back and not know me.
It had to be painful for Alex, sitting in rehab while his mom worked and while his baby daughter and baby mama stayed with his grandparents.
Laura moved in here, didn't take care of herself and all this, and she was a beautiful girl. But all her clothes were dirty and had cigarette holes burned in them. And every day with when Leslie was a baby, she would load her up in a buggy and walk her all the way up to the square, go around the square a couple of times and come home. And everybody loved Laura. But I finally said, that's stopping. Arlene was here, she was taking care of Leslie. I said, me and you are going shopping. So I took her to a couple of stores and bought her some real nice clothes.
Laura reportedly did not come from, let's just say, the best home. But Robert and Arlene got her into the habit of dressing with pride and practicing good hygiene. When Alex came out of rehab, he must have felt like he came back to a different lady friend. Unfortunately, neither Alex nor Laura sort of stayed with it. Laura slipped, left the relationship, and left Leslie Grace behind. Alex slipped again, and right about this time, something major occurred on the planet Earth. Something we would all like to forget.
So crazy how it worked out that it was right when COVID first started, and guess who qualified for those absolutely asinine unemployment benefits? Instead of getting $235 a week, he was getting like $800 and something a week to sit around and do nothing.
Like the worst thing that could have happened.
It blows my mind. He qualified for them. He was doing his job searches, checking the boxes.
Robert says it was always evident when Alex was high. He and Arlene would keep Leslie Grace during the week, so Alex was there a lot.
But he'd walk in that back door. You could tell by his eyes. But he was respectful. He was polite.
Alex would sit and talk with Robert, start to nod off a little, get up and then lay down in front of Leslie Grace and fall asleep playing with her.
Because I think that's the first time that he ever really wanted something different for himself or saw the possibility of life being different for himself. And he loved her. I mean, there was just a connection between those two that was undeniable. And I've never seen a person be more sincere about or more nervous about wanting to do right by somebody, you know?
Tracy believes Alex had a shot at putting drugs behind him for good with the inspiration of his daughter. But that COVID money and then that money going away.
And I think that's when it really, really, really got bad. And then all of a sudden, that tap got cut off. Just like that.
Think about that. You're more or less getting paid to indulge in your addiction. Life is simple, and you are far more hooked than you've ever been. Then suddenly, nothing. If you're taking your car to the same guy's shop for service and repair for a long period of time, and you show up one day and say, look, I really need to be able to keep this thing on the road, but I don't have the money this time. Could we work something out? What happens, I guess, depends on the relationship you have with that guy who owns the shop, right? Maybe something could be arranged.
If you would like to hear more podcast episodes like this one, visit asipofjustice.com. A Sip of Justice brings exposure to Mississippi cold cases. If you're listening, please tell a friend.
Now, we're going to tell you what happened the night Alex disappeared without some of those missing details. The reason he had been away for a while was a stint in jail. He'd been picked up on an outstanding warrant. That's also why no job, no phone.
So he had been in jail from February 16th all the way until April the 20th. And he was released on the pretrial intervention program.
As a reminder, Ashley drove her son back to Holmes County. There was a stop at a convenience store. The idea presented, hey, you could just drop me at my buddy's house and not have to go all the way to Pickens.
A little ways down, there's a driveway on the right. Well, as soon as we get close to it, the mailbox has this spotlight that comes on. It's like a motion light, super bright. And I was like, okay. Real loose gravel driveway. And as soon as we pulled in, there's a car right here on the right-hand side with a guy obviously sitting in it. And I was like, well, what's this guy doing over here on the wrong side of the driveway? And he's like, oh, that's just his brother.
Ashley gives him a hug, tells him to be careful, feels off about it, then is unable to reach him at all.
Found out 2 days later that had been his dealer for the entirety of his heroin addiction. Looked like regular property. I don't think from outward appearances that you could tell that was where the heroin dealer for the county lived. I also very quickly found out that I was one of the very few people that didn't know. All of law enforcement knows. County prosecutor knows. The district attorney knows. Large number of MBI and MBN agents know. It's a very sickening feeling. And he has been dealing heroin from that location for years. You've got somebody who is peddling poison who has at least 5. Not guesswork, not throwing it out there because I think it's a possibility. There are 5 overdose deaths from Holmes County and Yazoo County that are directly attributed to him. And that's just the ones that I know for certain. I'm sure there are dozens more.
Yeah, so now you know the dirt on Alex Easterling, but you don't yet truly know the complexity of this case or the extreme level of determination and effort on the part of his mother to solve it. In the past, when I've done these investigative podcasts, I have done a great deal of legwork in investigating myself. This time around, I'm just presenting it. It would take me a lifetime to achieve what Alex's family has achieved in pinpointing exactly what happened. Where, when, why, how, who. Hey, I told you, this family ain't the one. Coming up on Down in Mississippi.
He threw it his fifth about the backyard. Didn't want us in the backyard, period.
Down in Mississippi is produced, scored, edited by me, Jason Lee Ussery. It is a production of A Sip of Justice. Thanks.
Tell him about it.
Is advised. The views and opinions.
House that I was like, what do you mean you don't have to pay rent? He was like, no, it's my buddy's house. It's paid for.
Who's this buddy who had the house?
D. Edward Anderson. I learned his name on April 20th, 2022, when I was taking Alex back home to Pickens. He comes out of the store and was like, hey, instead of having to drive me all the way home, you can just drop me off at a buddy's house that's right here close by, and he'll just get me on home later tonight. I was like, we're basically there now. He's like, no, I know you don't want to go to Pickens. I was like, all right, well, where does he live? He's like, just right back across the interstate. So we got out and I hugged him. All right, I love you. I was like, be smart, please.
Ashley is like just the rock star of the situation. I mean, her capabilities and just being able to keep a sound mind and level-headed to be able to have done these crucial steps at the beginning, because everything that we've done has been based off of Alex's phone data. And had she not been smart enough to get that right away, immediately, and lock it down, there would be nothing. And it's crazy to me that with it all laid out in front of them on a silver platter, the Holmes County Sheriff's Department is still doing nothing.
The young lady you heard speaking there is Kayli Dorminey. You will get to know her and about the way she became involved in the Alex Easterling case. It's been a rough time for her in many ways, but she found a friend for life in Alex's mother, Ashley Martin, and she is an expert at this point in what we're beginning to expose this time around, the whole what, when, where, how, who business. Oh, and it is business down in Mississippi. From A Sip of Justice in the Tell 'em About It studio, Mississippi, USA, this is Down in Mississippi, Season 2, Episode 3, Bull Run. If you scope out a nice scam artist and you picked out your were a scam artist and you picked out your mark, you successfully ripped them off, and then discovered this guy you ripped off came from a family of powerful attorneys. Or let's say you're out illegally hunting bears in the forest. You scope out a nice one, you take him down, and then you turn to see Mama Bear coming out of the den, followed by several others, and they're coming after you. That, to me, is what it would be like to do great harm to Alex Easterling and then learn more about his family. Here's a little of what I've been hinting at the past couple episodes. Hear me out. Back in the day, when Arlene, again, that's the lady who would later be Alex's grandmother, met Robert Easterling, she was the single mother of Tracy, and she was really into scuba diving. She wanted Robert to try it too.
Arlene kept saying, you would love it. Yeah, I was going to look. If I wanted to be a scuba diver, I would have done it a long time ago because I do everything. I like living on the edge. For Father's Day, they gave me scuba lessons. So I went down there and tried to get my money back from the dive shop, and the guy kind of laughed. He says, "Well, your wife sure does know you well. She told me you'd be in there trying to get your money back."
When Robert found out there would be no refund, he went ahead and gave it a shot.
My first dive, I got as close to here to that door from a shark. And I mean, I was sucking air.
But Robert was hooked now. Diving became the family pastime, and they traveled every weekend, various locations, to swim down deep with fish sometimes larger than them. Robert eventually became so obsessed and gained so much product knowledge, he decided to open his own dive shop in the fam's then home of Laurel, SIP. Seems unlikely, right? But they found success and taught scuba diving to SIP residents in their swimming pool, certifying them to go out and do it for real. This was all while Robert was working his actual jobby job for General Motors. Around this time, Ashley Easterling was 7 years old, and she was watching her mom with fascination.
She would be teaching classes in the pool in the backyard, and I just couldn't stand it.
She would jump in the pool and go down to Arlene and pick up her octopus, which is the second. Are you a diver?
No.
Okay.
That first time I saw that shark, that would have been the last time I ever bleed up, my friends. Don't let anybody tell you different.
Regulator's got the one that the diver uses, and then you always have a backup mouthpiece that is the buddy rig, where if somebody else runs out, they use it. Or if you have a malfunction, well, she would go down and just put that one in and breathe.
She'd peep around and see me, and I'd swim up to the top, and so they decided they might as well teach me the right way to do it, since there wasn't going to be any way to keep me out of the water. I remember seeing my first shark. I think it was 8 or 9, and I wanted to see it. Everybody always talked about it.
Robert says that first shark was during a trip to Gulf Shores. He brought Ashley to a spot underneath a ridge where large nurse sharks would go to rest rather than fighting the current.
And she reached up and she touched that shark, and she did like that. And I knew I had her then. She was fearless.
Was she always just that way about everything?
Fearless. She was always fearless. Nothing scared her.
Ashley told me about one dive she did much later in life, her favorite. It's an experience known as Bull Run.
When you look over the side in the Bahamas, there's sharks everywhere. You look over, you see them. They say when you get in the water, get in, go down. Don't hover at the top. And it's bull sharks. But when they turned on that dinghy motor, every shark that was in the water, it was almost like Pavlov's bell. Those dorsal fins sat straight up, and they all started swimming in formation, and it was like, whoo, here we go.
She brought her cousin along on that trip, by the way.
Oh, of course, my cousin was like, I hate you.
My point in relaying all this to you, I want you to understand, when you're talking about Ashley and her mother Arlene, you're talking about women who literally aren't afraid to pet sharks, okay? And when it comes to Robert Easterling, this is a guy who has worked for many years as an investigator, a guy who is not shy about confrontations, about combat, about sticking his neck out. You already know about his military contract work. He is also a guy law enforcement and sometimes attorneys call when they really need a reliable person to get a job done. I didn't know any of this when I met him, and he was not at all what I was expecting. He's not a particularly big guy, but he has a very large presence, and he has kind of a biker look, very long white beard. Deep into our conversation, he was telling me about how much he appreciates the husbands of his 2 girls, Ashley and Tracy, how both of them had come and asked him for approval before taking a knee and proposing. And I thought to myself, how bad would that suck? To have to ask for this guy's blessing on marrying his baby. Tracy told me about the first time her beau sat down to dinner at the Easterling table, and how Robert decided to make conversation with him.
He said, "You've never been married. Well, are you gay?" And he asked that in front of everybody at the table. So, terrifying, yes.
As I said, Alex's grandfather Robert is a man law enforcement officials often turn to when they're in need. One of those officials is the sheriff of Holmes County, Willie March. Robert and March had a working relationship for decades, so when it became apparent to Ashley that her son was missing, she of course asked her dad to get up with Sheriff March. After all, Robert and Arlene live much closer to that property where Alex was last seen. That property owned by D. Edward Anderson, whom you will also hear referenced as Chucky. That's D. Edward's nickname. Robert phoned Sheriff Willie March early that next Friday morning.
It's like, my daughter dropped my grandson off at a guy named D. Edward Anderson's house. And Willie March acted like he didn't know who he was. He was like, "What's his name?"
Yes, March seemed to be unaware of D. Edward Anderson, but he agreed that morning to go to this property. You'll remember Ashley dropped a map pin when she dropped off Alex. Sheriff March is like, "Yeah, I can just use that."
The sheriff went over there and interviewed him and had him on speakerphone, and I listened to it from here. Tell me what happened, and he told the story about, Alex came by and we made small talk after dark and all this kind of stuff, and I'm standing out there without a shirt, and the mosquitoes ate me up, so I told Alex, "Wait just a minute, I'm gonna go put a shirt on."
So Robert, listening in over the phone, didn't like what he was hearing. He's like, "Hey, how about if I drive over and join the conversation? That good?" D. Edward, Chucky, says, "Sure, come on, I'll talk to anybody." Robert raced over there immediately and used what he and I both know as the Columbo technique. I'm sorry, Chucky, I got a little lost listening to your story. You mind running through it one more time?
So then he goes in his thing, basically the same thing, but we were sitting here talking, making small talk and all this kind of stuff, and I wanted a cigarette. So I went out and thought they were right there on my kitchen counter. Where they weren't. They were back in my bedroom, and I went and got a cigarette, and I came back out. Well, already I knew, he's already changed his story. Now, the sheriff is standing back, and he's listening to everything. We go on with this interview a little bit, and all of a sudden he says, "You're Alex's granddaddy, aren't you?" And I said, "I am." He said, "They call you Real Deal Outlaw, and Outlaw is my moniker." I said, "I don't know." He said, "Alex says you're the baddest motherfucker in this whole county." "Yeah, Alex told me all about you. I know all about you." And I stepped right up into his face, and I said, "No, you don't, but you're going to." And about that time, he says, "I'll be right back." So he leaves.
Back in a jiffy, guys. Okay, Anderson just took off.
So I turned around to the sheriff, and I said, "Okay, Willie, you spent the first 30 minutes after we were talking denying you even knew who this guy was. Now you know who he was, and I could tell that from the conversation that you had with him." I said, "Willie, we have worked together on and off very well for over 30 years. I was being very calm with him. I said, "What do you think happened?" He said, "I can tell you exactly what happened." He said, "Your grandson was in jail for the last 2.5 months. He shows up back here at his drug dealer's house. His mama drops him off. She leaves. Alex thinks he's just going to pick up where he was before he went to jail, which nobody knew he'd gone to jail." He says, "They gave him a hot shot and he OD'd. He said, they done took your boy way away from here. You'll never find him."
Now, there are some big problems with this little theory Willie lays out here, but we'll dig into that later on. At any rate, Chucky was not right back, as he had said, but Robert had gotten his phone number now.
When he picked up the phone and he called him, he was like, "Hey, Chuck, where'd you go?" He was like, "Well, I just came over here to Alex's house in Pickens to see if he might be here." He was like, You're in his house right now?" He's like, "Yeah, I didn't have a key or anything, so I just had to climb on up through the window. Stay where you are. I'll be right there."
With hindsight, having eventually stood face to face with Chucky, Ashley says this doesn't add up.
5'5", 5'6", not a tall man. There's no way he could have climbed in that window. I full well believe that he had a key to the house, but regardless of whether he entered through the front door or entered through the window, he's in Alex's house that Alex has lived in for 2 years by himself.
If you're like me, you're going, wait, so did the house belong to Anderson or not? I thought we had established that. For more, I'll properly introduce Kayli Dormany here. She is not here in the SIP, and she does not make her living in crime and or punishment. She just happened to run across Ashley Martin's story online one day and became instantly passionate about doing everything in her power to help with the case. When I spoke to her, cold, first conversation, I had seen a little of her work on YouTube pertaining to Alex, and I assumed this was just her thing, looking into unsolved mysteries. Nope. She told me it's pretty much all Alex all the time. Now, here is Kayli explaining the situation with the house. Was it Chucky's?
It's common knowledge that it's his place, but it's not in his name. You know, it's kind of what we call around here dope boy antics. You know, everything's in his mama's name or his old lady's name, or not in his name to try to avoid the paper trail. But it is his place, and it's common, and he treats it as his place, and he keeps eyes on it like it's his place.
That Friday, when Robert got to the house, he did a walkthrough, shooting video with his phone. I asked Ashley if they saw anything potentially significant in the place.
It looked like a drug user's house, you know, if I'm just being honest. Yeah. But it appeared that somebody else had been there more recently than 2 months.
From the look of it, Ashley figures the residence was being used as a trap house, a place where people could come and go if they needed to hide out, etc.
And then after that, we were told that nobody could go back in the house. It was a secured scene. They actually a couple of times called it a crime scene.
When Chucky parted ways with Robert Easterling and Sheriff Willie March that day, the sheriff said, hey, just let us know if you hear anything. Chucky recommended they look in on a guy named Dalton Householder, and that name will come up again in time. But at this particular moment, Robert knew it was time to break some bad news to Ashley.
And then, shortly after, I got a note that said, you took him to the drug dealer's house. And, my heart just sank.
If you would like to hear more podcast episodes like this one, visit A Sip of Investigations is delivered.
There is one particular Holmes County Sheriff's deputy with whom Robert Easterling has a true friendship, not just a working relationship. With Alex missing and the sheriff offering no help, he reached out to this deputy directly the day after his first encounter with Chucky. The deputy said, let's go on back out to that property and see what we can find. Remember Ashley mentioning all those junked up automobiles out there? The deputy informed Chucky that Robert was going to have a look around at and into those vehicles.
When he's doing that, the deputy was like, so tell me, D. Edward, what went on last night? Alex was by here and what? Well, yeah, it's like I told them.
At this point, according to Ashley and Robert, Chucky's account of what took place that night on his porch between himself and Alex changed again. He gave a third reason for going back inside, leaving Alex out there, and then returning.
I would have thought that would have given us probable cause to make him come and talk.
But no one was making D. Edward Anderson come and talk. So Ashley Martin went full-on detective. She started tracking Alex's movements up to the point he vanished.
Google tracks everything that you do. And being that he had just gotten that new phone, and it was an Android phone, and Google and Android in all the default settings go to track my every move, log my every keystroke, all that, unless you turn them off. I was able to log into his Google account and the Google timeline.
She was able to look at it and go, yep, there we are leaving Walmart. There we are at the gas station.
The Google timeline showed that he was on that property from 8:15 p.m. until 3:21 a.m. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, here you go, police.
Law enforcement said, hey, that's neat and all, but your Google gimmick is not enough to have us out there searching for your boy. Ashley said, all right, I'll do it myself.
Got on the phone, and within about 30 minutes had between 30 and 40 friends and family, horseback, ATVs, all that, and we just converged.
Of course, they did not have a right to search on the Anderson property, so they searched exhaustively around it.
It's a Pickens address, but it's still a county location. So Holmes County Sheriff's Department is their jurisdiction for where we were. They weren't present.
Weren't even present?
No, at all. For any searches that we did.
And yes, they did many searches. For starters, Alex's sister, again Alex's Aunt Tracy, secured the help of Texas EquiSearch. Later, the family received help from Mississippi Wildlife and Fisheries. They flew drones looking for Alex. I didn't even know they would do such a thing.
The specialized kind of drones that have the color filters. Alex had on a dark colored t-shirt and blue jeans and tan boots.
On that search, these drones picked up several items, none of which proved to be related to Alex. A blue tarp, a cooler, stuff like that.
That next Thursday, April the 28th, we had help with the Sunflower Search and Rescue. Stan Bennett and Miss Joellen Reed came out with their canines. Stan Bennett has trailing dogs.
Okay.
And Miss Joellen has the cadaver dogs. Mm-hmm. Until this point in time, I had no idea the difference in the two.
Members of the family showed up at Chucky's place mid-morning and said, "Hey, we'd like to search." With them, they had the duo from Sunflower Search and Rescue and that singular deputy friend I told you about earlier.
And it looked totally different to me in the daylight than it did the night that I dropped Alex off. But, again, nice trailer, big fencing, inside tilling up this great big garden. Chuck held us off for about an hour, saying, "No, you don't get to come in. No, we're not doing this." That was the one and only time that I've ever been eyeball to eyeball with Chucky. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't have any idea what he looked like. I knew he had gold teeth, and I knew he was short and stocky. And I'm pacing, just wanting to get in, and this guy comes walking out, and he walks over to the sheriff's deputy, and he shakes his hand, and he walks over to another guy and shakes his hand, and walks over to my dad, shakes his hand. I was like, oh, well, this is going to be somebody that's going to help us. So I start walking over, and when he turned around to me, I instantly knew who he was. And we were nose to nose, and I was like, where is he? Mm-hmm. Tell me where my son is. And I was just trying to help him. And I was like, help him how? Help him how? I was just trying to help him. And of course, it got heated, and the only thing I remember is my husband putting his hand on my shoulder and saying, "Ashley."
They were able to search the property that day, and the behavior of the dogs, along with Chucky's demand to leave one particular area out of the search, told quite a story. As this story unfolds, there are death threats, confrontations, eureka moments with the use of AI tech, and the revelation of surveillance video coming up on Down in Mississippi.
It was a motion-activated camera. So, it's going to start and stop when there's motion in there. There are definite times that I wanted to see. I want to see 9:26 when I know that phone left that property physically.
Down in Mississippi is produced, scored, and edited by me, Jason Liusri. It is a production of A Sip of Justice. Thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
them about it.
The following audio presentation contains language and subject matter that may not be appropriate for younger audiences. Listener discretion is advised. The views and opinions of those featured in the program may not necessarily reflect those of A Sip of Justice or Tell 'em About It Media.
Previously on Down in Mississippi.
So I turned around to the sheriff and I said, "Okay, Willie, you spent the first 30 minutes after we were talking denying you even knew who this guy was. Now you know who he was, and I could tell that from the conversation that you had with him." I said, "Willie, we have worked together on and off very well for over 30 years. I was being very calm with him. I said, "What do you think happened?" He said, "I can tell you exactly what happened." He said, "Your grandson was in jail for the last 2.5 months. He shows up back here at his drug dealer's house. His mama drops him off. She leaves. Alex thinks he's just going to pick up where he was before he went to jail, which nobody knew he'd gone to jail." He says, "They gave him a hot shot in the OD. He said, they done took your boy way away from here. You'll never find him."
That was the one and only time that I've ever been eyeball to eyeball with Chucky. I didn't have any idea what he looked like. I knew he had gold teeth, and I knew he was short and stocky. I mean, we were nose to nose, and I was like, "Where is he? Mm-hmm. Tell me where my son is." And I was just trying to help him. And I was like, "Help him how?"
It's way more than a lazy sheriff's department. Way more. Because it is I'm not afraid to say it. I mean, I'm PT down here, way down here in Florida. I know, I kind of try to be careful as far as making Ashley's life harder, but you ain't gonna tell her any different either. It's the things that have been done are way more than just incompetence. It crossed that threshold into malice.
So, a little bump in the road. There were developments. This took longer than expected, but we're here now, at that point where we put everything on the table. I started doing this investigative podcasting thing several years ago. It doesn't seem like it, but over those years, I've run into an unfortunate theme. It's one I would have never intentionally sought out, because I have many friends who are law enforcement. These friends are some of the best people I have known. And in fact, I could never have achieved resolutions in these prior cases without help from law officials. Walter Tucker, Dickie Blackburn, Mike Lee, Jim Johnson, Billy White, to name a few, plus the long list of men and women who have helped anonymously. But that unfortunate continued theme is that of corrupt or inept law enforcement. They can't all be golden, but the time for lies and injustice is just about up down in Mississippi. From A Sip of Justice in the Tell 'em About It studio, Mississippi, USA, this is Down in Mississippi, Season 2, Episode 4, Saving Grace. We will pick up where we left off in the previous episode. Alex's family and Sunflower Search and Rescue demanding to be allowed on the property to search. Chucky, the property owner, saying no. The sheriff, nowhere to be found, but his undersheriff comes by.
The chief deputy sheriff pulls up. Willie March is the sheriff. His brother, Roosevelt March, is the undersheriff and has been the entire 30 plus years that he's been the sheriff. Pulls up in his truck all the way to the front gate. We're outside the gate at this point. Never acknowledges us. Never comes out, I'm so sorry you're going through this. We're going to do everything we can to help you. Never exited his vehicle.
Willie's brother Roosevelt, who is his chief deputy, was there at first before Willie was elected sheriff. That's how they skirted around the nepotism thing.
That day at the property, Chucky's mother, Dolores, emerged to greet this undersheriff.
They carry on about a 25 to 30 minute, I'll just be blunt, flirtatious. You know, hee and ha and, you know, hand touching and all that. 25, 30 minutes, he just pulls out and leaves.
Still, the family stood their ground. Here's investigator, YouTuber, and family friend Kayli Dormany.
Chucky has a connection to Willie March. I don't know what it is or how deep it goes, but what I've been told to some of the people that live around there is that Chucky's mama used to mess around with Willie March, and Willie calls Chucky nephew. But that, you know, that could just be a term of endearment.
When he didn't want to let us on the property initially, Chucky made 2 phone calls. One was to his mom, and the other was to Sheriff March. And after he hung up with the 2 of them, he's like, all right, y'all can go ahead. They did the search dogs first. They instantaneously picked up on Alex's scent at that front gate, all the way to the front porch, all around on the front porch, and then they tried to go off the side of the porch, which is the south side of the house, and Chucky's like, nope, he didn't go back there.
Stan from Sunflower is like, if you didn't see him leave.
How do you know where he went? I know he didn't go back there. We're done.
Stan relented. His partner Joellen brought out the cadaver dogs.
With the cadaver dogs, there is an initial alert and a final alert. They gave initial alerts, but because we couldn't get, and we were on as far as we could go on the front side of the property, we went around to the back side of the property all the way up to the fence line.
Joellen told the family her dogs definitely wanted to advance beyond that fence. They could not because D. Edward Anderson, Chucky, had said no more. From a recording of the Sunflower team that day, here are the closing remarks.
Whole bottom line is he went on that property and went to that house, but he did not walk off.
He didn't come off of it?
He didn't walk off. He did not walk down.
Them seeing the cadaver dogs hit should have been all grounds to, still to this day, they have never got a search warrant or done anything of an official matter. Everything has been done through private agencies that Ashley's gotten together herself, which also means if she would have found anything, it wouldn't have been admissible in court anyway because the whole chain of custody thing. It's funny how that works because they just refused to be involved.
She is referencing Holmes County Sheriff's Department, of course. The family, no one, was ever allowed to search on that property again.
I'm a private investigator, and I'm a very good private investigator. And I thought, I'm going to nip this in the bud real quick. At that time, I had absolutely no idea how deep the corruption and the collusion and the drug dealing problems and the gangs and all, how deep that was. There'd always been rumors in Holmes County.
When Alex's grandfather, Robert, started making progress investigating the disappearance, he says informants let him know there were people coming for him. Robert sent his wife, Arlene, to Texas for 2 months, boarded up his home, and put loaded firearms in every room. You'll recall that one true friend of Robert's on the sheriff's staff. During those 2 months, Robert says weird stuff was happening with him.
Every time I talked to him, as soon as we're 2 or 3 minutes in the phone call, he gets a call from the sheriff's office, tells him to come down, see the sheriff. So he's convinced they've either bugged his truck or they've got his phone bugged, to the point that he's been demoted twice.
Meanwhile, Alex's mother, Ashley, through various means, including social media, continued to apply pressure on the sheriff's office to do something, and pressure on Chucky to cooperate with the investigation.
Monday, May the 2nd, D. Edward agreed to come in, voluntary interview at the Holmes County Sheriff's Department and to do a polygraph. He was supposed to be there at 10 a.m. that morning.
The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation has never officially taken on Alex's case, as it is a missing persons rather than a murder.
The way that law enforcement in Mississippi works, I mean, there's not a lot of cohesion.
But when Ashley learned Chucky would be coming into the station for an interview, she called up her MBI contact.
I was like, hey, I just got off the phone with Lieutenant Mitchell at Holmes County, and she says D. Edward's coming in for an interview. Is there any way that you can be there? I would just feel better knowing that you were there, maybe to ask additional questions. Because by this point in time, Willie March has already acted like he didn't know who Chucky was when he was fully well aware of who he was.
Nice surprise, the MBI agent did attend the meeting, or what was to be a meeting.
And so he called me a little bit later that morning and was like, well, he finally showed up about 11 o'clock and walked in the door and looked around the room, saw me and said, I'm feeling intimidated. This wasn't what I said I was doing. I'm feeling intimidated. I'm calling my attorney. And turned around and walked out.
Chucky never did hire any attorney, but hey, why would he? After that, he wasn't brought in for any follow-up. The day after, Chuck just pieced out of the sheriff's interview. Ashley, Tracy, and Brent Martin went to the prosecutor's office.
I just want to know what it takes to get a probable cause warrant. He said, you're not going to get a judge to sign it. There's just not a judge in Holmes County that's going to sign a warrant for him.
More frustrated than ever, yet determined as ever, Ashley stepped back and took some time to think. And she remembered seeing security cameras set up on D. Edward's property. She had spotted at least 4 of them.
After a whole lot of begging and pleading and fussing and foot stomping, they served a warrant and retrieved the hard drive for the security system on May the 6th, 2022. Got taken to the crime lab where it sat and sat and sat.
Ashley heard lots of reasons for the holdup. Literally stuff like, we had to order a part. Finally, the hard drive was handed to a third-party vendor. A private company took 1 day to retrieve the data, put it on a drive, and hand it back to the sheriff's department.
We were able to go and watch the surveillance on February the 23rd. It left me with more questions.
Could you see yourself on it?
Mm-hmm. And hugging Alex.
Mm-hmm.
I see Alex walking on the property and walking to the fence, to the gate. It was a motion-activated camera. So, it's going to start and stop when there's motion in there. There are definite times that I wanted to see. I want to see 9:26 when I know that phone left that property physically. Nope, it's not there. There's a whole hour missing.
You heard that right.
Okay, well, I'm going to see 8:36 when he made this phone call. That's not there. There's like 30 minutes missing.
Ashley was not allowed to leave with a copy of the footage, but she did shoot it on the monitor using her phone.
I was like, well, you say server, but once that they're on the thumb drive, you can delete individual files off the thumb drive. I was like, I'm not asking if they did that. I'm just asking if it's possible. Oh, yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I was like, where's the hard drive? Because there's stuff missing. Oh, we've already returned that to D. Edward. I was like, wait, what? Y'all, well, yeah, when they came by here to watch it the other day, we just went ahead and returned. I was like, they watched this before us? You allowed them to watch this footage before we got to see it? And you gave him the server back?
Also, again, she had seen 4 cameras on the property.
The bottom of the video says camera 2. Where's camera 1? Where's camera 3? Where is camera 4? Nope. Only thing we have is from camera 2. It's obviously missing data. One, because when one part stops and the next part starts, you've got a vehicle sitting right in front of the camera that you didn't see arrive. I mean, it's not like genius level stuff.
Watching with the sheriff's department, Ashley says everyone else stopped paying attention to the video after the point where Alex can be seen exiting through the gate. But she stayed glued to it.
2 of the people that pulled up, I knew 2 Caucasian people dark-haired girl and an older guy. Anyway, there were 2 other users that I knew because I had analyzed every person in Alex's contacts list. Well, I was like, okay, well, here are these 2 people. They were there that night, so can we question them? They brought each of them in, interviewed them separately, and both of them stated unequivocally that Dalton Householder was there that night when they came. They didn't speak to him directly, but they saw his vehicle and that he was out back feeding the dogs.
About Householder.
He knows something, but has yet to come out with it.
What do you know about him, about Dalton?
A lot. He is also an active user. Speedballing. That's his thing. Methamphetamine and the heroin together.
Sometime after Alex disappeared, Dalton was arrested on drug and gun possession charges, but he didn't spend very much time in the tank.
He's just walking around. Nobody stays in jail, which blows my mind for stuff like that.
And then a noteworthy encounter between Dalton Householder and Ashley.
She was doing like a depth measurement on the bridge, and he just kind of pulled up and started like, kind of seemed to me just being nosy, trying to figure. And she said he seemed really nervous. He's like, oh, he didn't call me. If he did, I didn't get it. And she's like, well, can we get your phone records? He said, oh, no, not without a warrant. And she was like, okay, well, that kind of tells me enough.
For the wreck, Dalton swears he was never on the property that fateful evening, but he's never offered any kind of alibi. On Saturday, May 7th, the largest ground search for Alex Easterling took place. Over 100 volunteers, 9 canine teams. People donated food and water for the searchers, porta potties. There were maps given out, sectors assigned. Ashley barely remembers that day, aside from the emotional outpouring from folks. Some having traveled from Alabama, Tennessee, Louisiana.
So much love and so much support. So many other family members there who came because this could be my child. We're struggling through the same thing that y'all have struggled with as family, or that had already lost somebody. By this point, reality had set in with me that I knew. It was just the day before that I was like, well, wait, all these dog teams are coming. What are they going to use for the scent trail? Do we... Do we need to go find some more of his clothes? Or whatever. And my sister had to sit me down and said, baby, they're not bringing trailing dogs this time.
Tracy and Brent convinced Ashley not to join a search party and risk finding Alex's body herself. And there were so many others there willing to take on that risk. Holmes County Sheriff's Department, not among them. But not only were deputies not present,
but then to find out that they were specifically by the Holmes County Sheriff instructed, do not go to that search.
2 days after the search, which turned up nothing despite that incredible effort, Ashley finally got hold of her son's Google takeout data, documentation of pretty much every move he made.
Latitude and longitude. I didn't even know what a JSON file was. I do now. It's the metadata.
Ashley pored over this metadata for 2 solid days, not eating, occasionally falling asleep for brief periods. She should be able to see all Alex's movements when he hooked to Wi-Fi, etc. But she needed help, and that's where her friend Kayli came into play.
Accidentally stumbled upon, like, hey, everybody's using this AI thing, this chat GPT, and me and Ashley were texting back and forth, kind of making a joke about how these kids have it, these days have it so easy because you can just go and have AI write your whole school paper for you. She was like, I wonder if it would help us with Alex's case. And I was like, well, hey, now that's a thought. And it was completely like just kind of, she went one way with her app and I went one way with my app. And before you know it, like we were on to something, because it made it where you don't have to do all the transcribing and the number for number, but literally we would just ask it, hey, if we copy and paste this JSON data that's, encrypted to us, can you break it down for us into terminology we understand? And it dang sure enough did. But it made it to where we can get more detailed on those phone pings and what's going on there, and what's at least what's going on with the phone, because I can't unequivocally say that Alex had the phone, because in my opinion I don't think he did, but that's neither here nor there. That that's just speculation.
8:31, there's one phone ping that's in the backyard. It comes back up to the house at 8:37.
This window of time coincides with documentation of Alex's phone tilting. What's that mean?
That gyroscope in it. That's how it can tell when you're taking a jog, exactly how many steps you've taken. But the fall detection, and I work in senior living, that's one of the features that I know a lot of phones have. So the tilting has a definition that Google uses. Device's angle relative to gravity changes significantly.
The Google phone activity detects 100% accuracy at tilting, which in order for it to tilt, that means that the phone had to go flat, to be at 100% accuracy. It didn't just tilt or turn. Like, he went from the upright standing position, or the phone did, to completely down. And that was at 8:33 p.m.
Digging through Alex's information, Ashley discovered her son had visited Chucky's property 435 times. There were texts from Chuck detailing work assignments for Alex, odd jobs like changing a tire, fixing something on the property. And Ashley says, with Alex gone, there are at least 4 workers remaining. One of them is householder, and one goes by Fruit Loop.
His users work for him, whether that be being the person who sits at the marathon station where they do their drug deals, and that's why the car sits in the driveway when you're first pulling in, because they cash out. You've got this stooge or whoever sits over there that's actually got the product on them.
Another big search for Alex was set to take place the weekend after I interviewed Ashley, and that is when that great big fire took place on Chucky's property. Yes, during a burn ban. Robert and Arlene Easterling drove out to the property while it was burning and took pictures proving the flames were specifically coming from that mysterious area behind the house. By the by, while Robert and Arlene were taking photos and videos from the road, here come Fruit Loop.
He pulls up on his wrecker and he starts cussing my mama and flipping her to the bird and doing all of this. But he went on to Chucky's property and loaded up a big John Deere tractor, and then came back and made several loops looking at my mom and dad. I just told him, I was like, hang the phone and go.
Firefighters eventually made it to the property. They were cursed at, denied access. Let it burn, they were told. Now, if you're going, okay, so it's like the sheriff said, Alex got free, went straight to his dealer, got a shot, overdosed, dead. There is at least an inconsistency you might consider.
All the other people who have overdosed that way, they just put them out somewhere. They've been found. It's been 503 days.
Consider that, hypothetically, if you are Alex's dealer, and Alex ODs on your property, and you move him from the property to another location, for example, the house he lives in, and especially if you have a degree of protection based on your relationship with the sheriff's department, you don't have a problem then, do you? So why not do that? Was Alex really going to his old unofficial boss for drugs?
So there's a sense of urgency, in my opinion, that he's got to get there. I don't know what about. I could assume because of his prior arrest, because he just got out of jail that day and been in jail for 2 months, that it could possibly be like a debt that he had before he got arrested or something along those lines, because Ashley said in her gut feeling, because she knows she's been, he was an addict and she was well aware of it and doesn't sugarcoat it, but she didn't feel like, in her opinion, his sense of his urgency wasn't to go get high. It was more like, I got to go handle something, or I got to go take care of something. And Alex was no fool. He would not have had his mama drop him off at the dope man's house if that's what he was doing, was to get high, because he knows she would have came up in there like a wrecking ball.
Now, of course, I interviewed the Holmes County Sheriff or a representative for this podcast, right? No. First time I rang, I kid you not, there was no answer. At the sheriff's office in the middle of the day. Second time, I got this.
Hello?
Sheriff Department.
Oh, hey, good afternoon. I'm hoping to speak with Sheriff March.
He's not in at this moment.
Okay, could I leave a message for him, maybe? Voicemail, or leave a message with someone there?
Oh, please.
Okay, thank you.
The person at extension 227 cannot take your call. Please leave your message after the tone. When done, hang up or press the pound key. Sorry, but the user's mailbox can't accept more messages.
Have never been able to get up with anyone in person or otherwise. Has Kayli Dorminey had any luck?
I mean, I've been trying to call for, probably the better part of 6 months. Will not take my call, neither will Juanita. At this point, I would be willing to talk to any of them, but I can't get anybody on the phone but the secretary, and it's almost like she's anticipating to tell me nope, not today, not a good time. Apparently, there's no good time.
Weeks after Alex Easterling's disappearance, Robert and Arlene attended a function involving county leaders. There, Robert spotted Sheriff Willie March at a table with one of his men. Robert got up to go have a word. Arlene tried to stop him.
So we got through with the meal. She said, please, please, please. And everywhere I go, I carry a pistol. She said, please, 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 just remember, think of your family, think of Leslie. And I said, I am. I'm thinking of all of you, and I'm thinking of Alex. So I just got up and walked over there. Sam was getting up trying to leave, and I got called him first. They were putting stuff in their hands so they wouldn't have to shake hands with me. I said, how you doing, Sam? Shook his hand. I mean, he was just speechless. And then Willie was trying to go around the table. I just cut him off, stuck my hand out. How you doing, Sheriff? I'm not going to talk to you at this function because this is not the place or time. But I'll be in touch with you, both of you.
They were trying to get out of there before you even got over there. I mean, it's like, hit the door, man.
There is undeniably a part of Alex Easterling still living and breathing down in Mississippi. Her name is Leslie Grace. Before the disappearance, Alex asked his Aunt Tracy to be her godmother.
He went to the church, and I stood with him, and, we christened her, and we gave her over to God, and he did it with his whole heart, with everything in him, as a man, as a father, as her blood. He did that. And that is how much he loved her.
For a while, in the presence of Leslie Grace, the family did their best to behave like nothing was awry.
We stopped at one of the gas stations on the way home from Lexington to get a treat, and she's like, Mammy, why is my daddy's picture everywhere? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, his picture is everywhere, like right there, and pointed in the window, and somebody had put up a missing poster.
All this time passed now, there's no longer any pretense.
The life that he lived had inherent risks that went with it. We talked about it openly and honestly, and I would fuss or I would cry, and I always felt like my worst nightmare would be getting that phone call. Is this Miss, Ashley Martin? We regret to inform you that your son, little did I know that there was something 1,000 times worse than that.
Alex, of course, is responsible for his own choices. But I personally hold the sheriff responsible for allowing this to happen under his watch, because he knows all these players, and he has covered everything since day one. He's protected the man that murdered Alex, all his little minions.
Robert, who was again extremely close with his grandson, is now extremely close with his great-granddaughter.
And she knows that when I look at her, I'm looking at her daddy.
Robert is haunted by something he says he told Alex more than once.
I'll never throw you under the bus, and I'll always have your back. And I feel like I let him down.
When I was in Robert and Arlene's home, Arlene saw me looking at a little ornamental angel, and she told me found it in a jewelry store. Felt she was meant to find it.
This was the first thing I saw when I walked in. I love angels anyway. I picked it up to look at it the other night, and I thought, do you see what it says? R-A-E, Ray?
Mm-hmm.
Robert Alexander Easterling.
That's the angel of sunshine. And You Are My Sunshine was mine and Alex's song, and it's mine and Leslie's song.
Alex is, well, he will always be in my heart.
Yeah.
Always. But I won't hold him on this earth again, but I will hold him again.
I want to thank the Easterling family for allowing me to tell this story. Also, Kayli Dormany. If you really want to dig into the most minute details of the case, Kayli continues to thoroughly lay information on the table. I'll provide a link to her YouTube page in the show notes. And of course, to you all, thanks. I'll talk to you soon.
Hey y'all, let's delve into the world of astrology to uncover hidden patterns that can provide valuable insights into what potentially could have happened to Alex Easterling on April 20th, 2022, the last day he disappeared. Firstly, let's take a look at the chart. Notice the repeated patterns at 4, 16, and 28 degrees. These angles indicate possible threats to the victim or their family. Analyzing the positions in the chart reveals intriguing scenarios. For instance, Pluto in the third house signifies communication, local surroundings, short trips, and vehicles. This suggests potential chaos or accidents involving cars. The placement of Pluto at 28 degrees also raises concerns. It signifies threats to the victim and their family. Along with domestic violence, the moon in the second house relates to possessions and material concerns. It indicates areas of focus, such as belongings, finances, and personal items. At 28 degrees, the moon reflects themes of nurturing, the home, public image, and emotional ties. These aspects add crucial layers to the predictive analysis. The victim's Sagittarius placement hints at premeditation of the crime. Venus, acting as the point of interest, sits in the fourth house, associated with home matters and resolving issues. Depending on the specific timing, Venus may influence entertainment, recreation, or social gatherings. Positioned at 16 degrees, Venus signifies nurturing, domesticity, or public attention. Neptune's presence in Pisces signifies potential substance abuse, mental health issues, or deception. Located in the fifth house, Neptune points to recreational activities, indulgences, and creative pursuits. The alignment with Jupiter can indicate oil or water-related incidents. Uranus in Taurus symbolizes sudden events, suffocation, or aggressive actions. At 13 degrees, Uranus signifies rapid developments, conflict, or disruptive influences. Its position near the 7th house highlights themes of abuse, particularly in domestic settings. Chiron's placement in Aries hints at head injuries or physical trauma, potentially intensified by its conjunction with Jupiter. The Sun's position in the 6th house relates to health, work, and potential threats like stalking. Mars at 4 degrees suggests anger or aggression, particularly in domestic or concluding situations. Lilith in the 8th house signifies darker themes like death, criminal activities, or financial misconduct. Lastly, the South Node in Scorpio alludes to hidden truths or undisclosed aspects related to the victim. And Saturn in Aquarius points to elevated or well-lit locations, either within buildings or outdoors. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative or interesting, please consider subscribing.
Why are you so scared? Miss Ashley's been a big baby.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Are you crying?
No.